come back there.
Renee here?
What's it been?
Teresa's mom too?
Oh man, she
And
said she's
Brian?
getting 4-8. I said, whoa, I retire. And plus she gets baby stamps and she gets her apartment paid for.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And she gets child support for her kids. I wonder why she did it. She got all that stuff. Wait for it.
Every day?
I mean, I know, not every, and then the cook has to work. She has to
Every day he has an orthodontist.
She said, you don't have to
John trying to get his. Can I go in front of the camera?
It's like a 75. She said, yeah. No. She said, I'm getting a new car. You have a car like that? No, she said she already got that one. And then I was like, where's the middle way of She said, let's see it. I said, no, I gotta go first. It's kind of blue. She said, no problem. She was like, and so she drew me. Yeah, she was like, let's see. My car.
Does everybody have their books? Over here in the corner is a friend of mine. Her name is Lois Addison. So everybody welcome Lois. Okay, how many of you have ever known a bully? How many of you have ever been a bully? Uh-oh. Marlon, tell me about when you've been a bully.
You make people do whatever you want to do.
Why did you do it? Just because?
Because they were weak and helpless.
Okay, they were weak and helpless, and you were strong and powerful, and you overpowered them. Hey, Brian, what about you?
Brian?
You ever been a bully? Okay.
No, don't lie about it.
Down. Who else? Has had an experience with a bully or been bullied? Krista, you might raise your hand while I got it.
I used to beat up on other kids and then pick up my little brother, because he was quiet and he was
Okay.
loud, so if they talked about him, I used to worry about him every time.
Well, that was more of an act of defense for your little brother. Well, see, like Marlon said, he beat up on people just because they were there, and he could. Everybody know that?
That was an elementary.
You picked on people before? Tell me about it.
Just picked them because they were smaller than me.
Just because. Did it give you some joy or sense
If they
of
look at me, I don't want them looking at me.
That look out small to you.
Oh, no. I got a lot of mean people in my class.
That's right.
Not anymore.
Not the other
How about me? You think I would do that?
No.
He got beat up on too.
That's right. I think I'm small now. Well, when I was in high school, actually, when I was a freshman in high school, there were two people who just found me every day and beat the living daylights out of me. But I learned how to fight back. But when I was in the 7th grade, I'll tell you a story. You may believe it, you may not. When I was in the 7th grade, I had an experience. I had a friend who was big as the side of a barn, a big fat friend. And he and I we used to find him every day at others' instigation and beat him up. And we did it because it pleased everybody else around us. We thought it was real cute. Everybody thought, oh, they're beating up on this little boy. And so one day he was standing in front of the stairs. We had a 2-story junior high school. And he was standing in front of the stairs, and me and my friend, the big fat boy, we came and we got on either side of Kevin and we picked him up by his ears, the top of his ears. And we tossed him down the stairs. But the reason I did it was not because I wanted to do it. I did it because everybody else around me thought that was the thing to do. They thought that was real fun. They thought it was great to laugh at somebody like that. And I never will forget, and even talking about it today, how it made me feel inside. Ever since that happened, and even up until today, I wish that I had acted from a consciousness of what was right or wrong versus doing something just because everybody else thought it was cute. Do you think think in society today we do a lot of things because it pleases other people?
Yeah.
Okay, instead of ourselves? Right, a lot in society today. We do things because other people get some type of pleasure out of it, not necessarily because we think it's right. Even in light of the time, we think it's wrong. We do it regardless of that because other people think it's cute.
Did he get hurt?
No, he didn't get hurt, thank goodness. I was afraid of it after it happened. I thought back that he could have broken something easily. Could have broke his neck and died. I mean, literally. But you'll find out in 20th century literature many times authors will point out, we've been talking about the cruelty of man, authors will point out how cruel man is and how pointless that cruelty is. And many times, it just so happens, what race of man is it that gets the short end of the stick here? Okay, who is it that's doing the acts of cruelty? Usually? The white man. Why do you think that's so? Why does that think? Hey, we've all heard the expression, this is the white man's world. Yes. How many believe that? Well, hopefully we're getting away from Jesus. Yes, everybody's supposed to be equal. But some are more equal than others, right? Okay.
But that's like animal farm.
Right, we're going to be talking about that in a minute too. I'm losing some people. Well, in 1826, the British government invaded a small country known as Burma. Does anyone know where Burma is? It's near India. Near India. And they imposed British rule there. And this went on from 1826 until 1890. And today we're going to be reading a story that deals with the internal conflicts that one man has who is there in Burma imposing the British rule on the Burmese people. And we're going to be talking about the conflicts that he has internally, the way he thinks about it, the struggles he has within himself. And remember, one of the types of struggles in 20th century literature is man versus whom? And himself. And today we're going to be talking about that a little bit. And the story is based on this time from 1826 until the 1890s when this British rule was being imposed on the Burmese people. So I want you to open up your books to page 883, and we're going to start by reading some of the background material, and the author is George Orwell. Where have we seen George Orwell before?
1984?
1984 was real famous, and what else? Animal Farm, good. Animal Farm in 1984 is famous. Okay, who wants to read for me? Okay, Flower's going to read. Go ahead, Flower.
George Orwell was a writer who disliked thrills, both in life and in life. Pursuing his own brand of integrity, he liked ugly rather than beautiful rooms, worn clothes rather than new ones, and abrupt rather than ingratiating personalities. As a writer, he cultivated a beautiful, clear prose style and strove to cut out all stale and empty images, all prefabricated phrases, needless repetitions, and humbug and vagueness generally. He believed that a muddled style could lead to vague thinking, and that precision in both thought and writing was one of the chief defenses against political tyranny. Tyranny. As a writer, his chief concern was to warn against such tyranny. His two most famous books, Animal Farm in 1984, are both reminders that most countries' liberty is ever completely secure. Animal Farm, a brilliant fable, traces the downward path of a revolution of animals from the initial decree that all animals are equal to the revised version all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. 1984 is a stern warning. A nightmarish tale of a future in which freedom has lost its freedom. Orwell was a liberal in the British sense, a firm believer in freedom and a hater of tyranny from both right and left. His main preoccupation was to save modern civilization from the result of his own policies.
Okay, thank you. Who else wants to read? Who else will read? Sacrifice. Cindy? Okay.
Georgetown was the pseudonym adopted by Eric Blair, born in India. He was sent to a boarding school in England at an early age. He completed his formal education in India. His service was esteemed careful Burma led not only to his essay shooting elephants, but also to a novel, Burning Six. So Orwell was born into the lower upper middle class. The term is used to characterize people with upper middle class pretensions who lack commitment to the education. As Orwell wrote, theoretically you know how to wear your clothes and how to order a good dinner, although in practice you could never afford a decent dinner or a decent restaurant. Very early and in part because of his burning experience with deeper intense realities of mind that might have been accepted. He chose poverty, a working class background, and suffering to the just his career, a young man that did not have policy. In 1836, Orwell was wounded after fighting in the loyal fighting Spanish Civil War. He describes his war experience as one of his books, published to Catalan one year. From the middle of 1930s on, Orwell wrote novels and essays till ill health studies and writing. He began famous only in the 1940s after I was born in 1904. His greatest successes were published. At the very end of his life, he married, but through the kindness of friends, he was taken home in Western Islands of Scotland to start finding illness that found communication.
Thank you. Okay, it says that he believed that a muddled style could lead to vague thinking and that precision in both thought and writing is one of the chief defenses against political tyranny. So what type of style of writing is he going to have? Okay, get away from that. Let's just talk about his writing style, the words that he chooses. Okay, what about the words that he chooses to use in his writing, the sentence structure? How do you think it's going to be if he hates a muddled style? Okay, it's going to be clear. Is he going to beat around the bush?
No.
No, it's going to be direct and explicit, and he's going to state in concrete language, something we've been talking about all semester, exactly what he's trying to say. So as we're reading through that, in addition to pay attention to his style, I want you to think about the recurring elements that we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks now. This is our last story in our 20th century unit, and we've had a whole list of elements that we've been talking about. And try to see if you can find some in here that parallel the other stories. And also I want you to think about the theme of this work. Remember, how long is the theme supposed to be of the story? One sentence, and it's supposed to be universal, right? But it's also supposed to be, what's the word we said? You said it, Camilla, was that you said? Abstract, good. So it's a one-sentence, universal, abstract theme that will be here. It doesn't include the name of the work, and it doesn't really include any of the characters' name in the story. It applies to all mankind. I'll read a little bit, and then I'm going to call on some people to read for me because my throat won't make it into anything. Okay, Shooting an Elephant by George Orwell. In Moulmein, in Lower Burma, I was hated by large numbers of people, the only time in my life that I had been important enough for this to happen to me. I was sub-divisional police officer of the town, and in an aimless, petty kind of way, anti-European feeling was very bitter. No one had the guts to raise a riot, but if a European woman went through the bazaars alone, somebody would probably spit battle juice over her dress. As a police officer, I was an obvious target, and was baited whenever it seemed safe to do so. When a nimble Burman tripped me up on the football field, and the referee, another Burman, looked the other way, the crowd yelled with hideous laughter. This happened more than once. In the end, the sneering yellow faces of young men that met me everywhere, the insults hooted after me when I was at a safe distance, got badly on my nerves. The young Buddhist priests were the worst of all. There were several thousands of them in the town, and none of them seemed to have anything to do except stand on the street corners and jeer at Europeans. All this was perplexing and upsetting, for at that time I had already made up my mind that imperialism was an evil thing, and the sooner I chucked up my job and got out of it, the better. Theoretically, and secretly, of course, I was all for the Burmese and all against their oppressors, the British. As for the job I was doing, I hated it more bitterly than I can perhaps make clear. In a job like that, you see the dirty work of empire at close quarters, the wretched prisoners huddling in the stinking cages of the lockups, the gray cow faces of the long-term convicts, the scarred buttocks of the men who had been flogged with bamboos. All these oppressed me with an intolerable sense of guilt. But I could get nothing into perspective. I was young and ill-educated, and I had to think out my problems in the utter silence that is imposed on every Englishman in the East. I did not even know that the British Empire is dying. Still less did I know that it is a great deal better than the young empires that are going to supplant it. All I knew was that I was stuck between my hatred of the empire I served and my rage against the evil-spirited little beasts who tried to make my job impossible. With one part of my mind, I thought that the British Raj was an unbreakable tyranny, as something clamped down in secula seculorum upon the will of the prostrate peoples. With another part, I thought that the greatest joy in the world would be to drive a bayonet into a Buddhist priest's guts. Feelings like these are normal byproducts of imperialism. Ask any Anglo-Indian official if you can catch him off duty. One day, something happened which in a roundabout way was enlightening. It was a tiny incident in itself, but it gave me a better glimpse than I'd had before of the real nature of imperialism, the real motives for which despotic governments act. Early one morning, the sub-inspector at a police station the other end of town rang me up on the phone and said an elephant was ravaging the bazaar. Would I please come and do something about it? I did not know what I could do, but I wanted to see what was happening, and I got onto a pony and started out. I took my rifle, an old .44 Winchester, much too small to kill an elephant, but I thought that the noise might be useful in interim. Various Burmans stopped me on the way and told me about the elephant's doings. It was not, of course, a wild elephant, but a tame one which had gone must. It had been chained up, as tame elephants always are when their attack of must is due. But on the previous night, it had broken its chains and escaped. Its mahout, the only person who could manage it when it was in that state, had set out in pursuit. But he had taken the wrong direction and was now 12 hours' journey away. And in the morning, the elephant had suddenly reappeared in the town. The Burmese population had no weapons and were quite helpless against it. It had already destroyed somebody's bamboo hut, killed a cow, and raided some fruit stalls, and devoured the stock. Also, it had met the municipal rubbish van, and when the driver jumped out and took to his heels, had turned the van over and inflicted violence upon him. The Burmese sub-inspector and some Indian constables were waiting for me in the quarter where the elephant had been seen. It was a very poor quarter, a labyrinth of squalid bamboo huts thatched with palm leaves, winding all over a steep hillside. I remember that it was a cloudy, stuffy morning at the beginning of the rains. We began questioning the people as to where the elephant had gone, and as usual failed to get any definite information. That is invariably true. That is invariably the case in the East. A story always sounds clear enough at a distance, but the nearer you get to the scene of events, the vaguer it becomes. Some of the people said that the elephant had gone in one direction. Some said that he had gone in another. Some professed not even to have heard of any elephant. I'd almost made up my mind that the whole story was a pack of lies when we heard yells a little distance away. There was a loud, scandalized cry of, "Go away, child! Go away this instant!" And an old woman with a switch in her hand came around the corner of a hut, violently shooing away a crowd of naked children. Some more women followed, clicking their tongues and exclaiming. Evidently, there was something there that the children ought not to have seen. I rounded the hut and saw a man's dead body sprawling in the mud. He was an Indian, a black Dravidian Kulu, almost naked, and he could not have been dead many minutes. The people said that the elephant had come suddenly upon him, round the corner of the hut, caught him with its trunk, put its foot on his back, and ground him into the earth. This was the rainy season, and the ground was soft, and his face had scored a trench a foot deep and a couple of yards long. He was lying on his belly with the arms crucified and head sharply twisted to one side. His face was coated with mud, the eyes wide open, the teeth bared and grinning with an expression of unendurable agony. Never tell me, by the way, that the dead look peaceful. Most of the corpses that I have seen look devilish. The friction of the great beast's foot had stripped the skin from his back as neatly as one skins a rabbit. As soon as I saw the dead man, I sent an orderly to a friend's house nearby to borrow an elephant's rifle. I had already sent back the pony, not wanting it to go mad with fright and throw me if it smelled the elephant. The orderly came back in a few minutes with a rifle and 5 cartridges, and meanwhile some Burmans had arrived and told us that the elephant was in the paddy fields below, only a few hundred yards away. As I started forward, practically the whole population of the quarter flocked out of their houses and followed me. They had all seen the rifle and were all shouting excitedly that I was going to shoot the elephant. They had not shown much interest in the elephant when he was merely ravaging their homes, but it was different now that he was going to be shot. It was a bit of fun to them, as it would be to an English crowd. Besides, they wanted the meat. It made me vaguely uneasy. I had no intention of shooting the elephant. I had merely sent for the rifle to defend myself if necessary. And it is always unnerving to have a crowd following you. I marched down the hill, looking and feeling a fool, with the rifle over my shoulder and an ever-growing army of people jostling at my heels. At the bottom, when you got away from the huts, there was a metalled road, and beyond that, a miry waste of paddy fields 1,000 yards across, not yet plowed, but soggy from the first rains, and dotted with coarse grass. The elephant was standing 80 yards from the road, his left side towards us. He took not the slightest notice of the crowd's approach. He was tearing up bunches of grass, beating them against his knees to clean them, and stuffing them into his mouth. I had halted on the road. As soon as I saw the elephant, I knew with perfect certainty that I ought not to shoot him. It is a serious matter to shoot a working elephant. It is comparable to destroying a huge and costly piece of machinery, and obviously one ought not to do it if it can possibly be avoided. And at that distance, peacefully eating, the elephant looked no more dangerous than a cow. I thought then, and I think now, that his attack of must was already passing off, in which case he would merely wander harmlessly about until the mahout came back and called. Moreover, I did not in the least want to shoot him. I decided that I would watch him for a little while to make sure that he did not turn savage again and then go home. But at that moment I glanced around at the crowd that had followed me. There was an immense crowd, 2,000 at the least, and growing every minute. It blocked the road for a long distance on either side. I looked at the sea of yellow faces above the garish clothes, faces all happy and excited over this bit of fun, all certain that the elephant was going to be shot. They were watching me as they would watch a conjurer about to perform a trick. They did not like me, but with the magical rifle in my hands, I was momentarily worth watching. Suddenly I realized that I should have to shoot the elephant after all. The people expected it of me, and I had got to do it. I could feel their 2,000 wills pressing me forward irresistibly. And it was at this moment, as I stood there with the rifle in my hands, that I first grasped the hollowness, the futility of the white man's dominion in the East. Here was I, the white man with his gun, standing in front of the unarmed native crowd, seemingly the leading actor of the piece, but in reality I was only an absurd puppet pushed to and fro by the will of those yellow faces behind. I perceived in this moment that when the white man turns tyrant, it is his own freedom that he destroys. He becomes a sort of hollow, posing dummy, the conventionalized figure of the Sahib. For it is the condition of his rule that he shall spend his life in trying to impress the natives, and so in every crisis he has got to do what the natives expect of him. He wears a mask, and his face grows to fit it. I've got to shoot the elephant. I had committed myself to doing it when I sent for the rifle. A Sahib has got to act like a Sahib. He has got to appear resolute, to know his own mind and do definite things. To come all that way, rifle in hand, with 2,000 people marching at my heels, and then to trail feebly away, having done nothing. No, that was impossible. The crowd would laugh at me. And my whole life, every white man's life in the East, was one long struggle not to be laughed at. But I did not want to shoot the elephant. I watched him beating his bunch of grass against his knees with that preoccupied grandmotherly air that elephants have. It seemed to me that it would be murder to shoot him. At that age, I was not squeamish about killing animals, but I had never shot an elephant and never wanted to. Somehow it always seems worse to kill a large animal. Besides, there was the beast's owner to be considered. Alive, the elephant was worth at least 100 pounds. Dead, he would be worth the value of his tusk, 5 pounds possibly. But I had got to act quickly. I turned to some experienced-looking Burmans who had been there when we arrived and asked them how the elephant had been behaving. They all said the same thing. He took no notice of you if you left him alone, but he might charge if you went too closely to him. It was perfectly clear to me that what I ought to do. I ought to walk up within, say, 25 yards of the elephant and test his behavior. If he charged, I could shoot. If he took no notice of me, it would be safe to leave him until the mahout came back. But also I knew that I was going to do no such thing. I was a poor shot with a rifle, and the ground was soft mud, into which one could sink at every step. If the elephant charged and I missed him, I should have about as much chance as a toad under a steamroller. But even then, I was not thinking particularly of my own skin. only the watchful yellow faces behind. For at that moment, with the crowd watching me, I was not afraid in the ordinary sense, as I would have been if I had been alone. A white man mustn't be frightened in front of the natives, and so, in general, he isn't frightened. The sole thought in my mind was that if anything went wrong, those 2,000 Burmans would see me pursued, caught, trampled on, and reduced to a grinning corpse like that Indian up the hill. And if that happened, it was quite probable that some of them would laugh. That would never do. There was only one alternative. I shoved the cartridges into the magazine and lay down on the road to get a better aim. The crowd grew very still, and in a deep, low, happy sigh, as of people who see the theater curtain go up at last, breathed from innumerable throats. They were going to have their bit of fun, after all. The rifle was a beautiful German thing with crosshair sights. I did not then know that in shooting an elephant, one should shoot to cut an imaginary bar running from ear hole to ear hole. I ought therefore, as the elephant was sideways on, to have aimed straight at his ear hole. Actually, I aimed several inches in front of this, thinking the brain would be further forward. When I pulled the trigger, I did not hear the bang or feel the kick. One never does when the shot goes home. But I heard the devilish roar of glee that went up from the crowd. In that instant, in too short of a time, one would have thought, even for the bullet to get there, a mysterious, terrible change had come over the elephant. He neither stirred nor fell, but every line of his body had altered. He looked suddenly stricken, shrunken, immensely old, as though the frightful impact of the bullet had paralyzed him without knocking him down. At last, after what seemed a long time, it might have been 5 seconds, I dare say he sagged flabbily to his knees. His mouth slobbered. An enormous senility seemed to have settled upon him. One could have imagined him thousands of years old. I fired again into the same spot. At the second shot, he did not collapse, but climbed with desperate slowness to his feet and stood weakly upright, with legs sagging and head drooping. I fired a third time. That was the shot that did for him. You could see the agony of it, jolt his whole body, and knock the last remnant of strength from his leg. But in falling, he seemed for a moment to rise, for as his hind legs collapsed beneath him, he seemed to tower upwards like a huge rock toppling, his trunk reaching skyward like a tree. He trumpeted for the first and only time, and then down he came, his belly towards me, with a crash that seemed to shake the ground, even where I lay. I got up. The Burmans were already racing past me across the mud. It was obvious that the elephant would never rise again. But he was not dead. He was breathing very rhythmically with long rattling gasps, his great mound of a side painfully rising and falling. His mouth was wide open, and I could see far down into the caverns of a pale to pink throat. I waited a long time for him to die, but his breathing did not weaken. Finally, I fired my 2 remaining shots into the spot where I thought his heart must be. The thick blood welled out of him like red velvet, but still, he did not die. His body did not even jerk when the shots hit him. The tortured breathing continued without a pause. He was dying, very slowly, and in great agony, but in some world remote from me, where not even a bullet could damage him further. I felt that I had got to put an end to this dreadful noise. It seemed dreadful to see that great beast lying there, powerless to move, and yet powerless to die. And not even to be able to finish him. I sent back for my small rifle and poured shot after shot into his heart and down his throat. They seemed to make no impression. That tortured gasps continued as steadily as the ticking of a clock. In the end, I could not stand it any longer and went away. I heard later that it took him half an hour to die. Burmans were arriving with dolls and baskets even before I left, and I was told that they had stripped his body almost to the bones by the afternoon. So you finish your poem about this.
Afterwards, of course, there were endless discussions about the shooting of the elephant. The owner was furious, but he only was an Indian and could do nothing. Besides, legally, I had done the right thing, for my elephant has to be killed, like a mad dog, if its owner fails to control it. Among the Europeans' opinion was divided. The older men said I was right. The younger men said it was a damn shame to shoot an elephant to kill it cruelly, because an elephant was worth more than any damn hoary. And afterwards, I was very glad that the coolie had been killed. It put me legally in the right and gave me a sufficient pretext for shooting the elephant. I often wondered whether any of the others grasped what I did, and that it only to me was the
Okay, get everything off your desk first. Yes, you may write on these, and hold them at your desk until I get them all up at once. Okay, just a few more seconds on that. Is anybody still writing? Okay, just a couple more seconds. Okay, make sure your names are on them and pass them forward. No. Okay, is that all the quizzes? Okay, the author believes that imperialism is what? Evil. He thinks it's evil. The women are trying to keep the children from seeing what? A dead body. The narrator believes dead bodies look devilish. Good. At first, the narrator, he had no intention of killing the elephant. Right. What persuaded him to do so? The people's what?
Their will.
Their will. He said he felt their wills pressed. The people wanted him to kill that elephant. Good. Okay, the narrator shoots the elephant, where he says the people expected him to shoot it. Okay. The narrator's greatest fear. They will laugh at him. And the narrator first shoots the elephant where? In the brain, right. And after the first shot, the elephant appears old. He seemed in 1 second to age thousands of years. Okay, it is hard for the narrator to kill an elephant because why? Okay, it's a large animal. It's harder to kill large animals. And what did the Burmans do? They stripped the elephant down to its bones. Good. How many got them all right? Yeah. Oh, okay, well, I'll give you another one. Okay, how many missed one? 2? Okay, we won't go into there. No, we won't go down 3 because people are getting a little nervous. Okay, I asked you at the beginning, before we read this story, to be looking for some recurring elements. And in the first, one of the first passages over on page 885, first column, about halfway down, there's one section in there and it has many of the recurring elements in 20th century literature. So go ahead and get your books out on your desk and let's talk about it a little bit. 885, yes ma'am. Okay, about halfway down the first column, it talks about the prisoners that they had taken captive. And it says, they were wretched prisoners, huddling in the stinking cages of the lockups, the gray, cowed faces of the long-term convicts, the scarred buttocks of the men who had been flogged with bamboo. All these oppressed me with an intolerable sense of guilt. So what are some of the recurring elements of the 20th century? Okay, guilt, that's one. Good. What else? Cruelty of mankind or people, as Cindy likes it stated. And what else? I'm going to line all these on the board in a minute. So. What else? What did we see in Black Boy yesterday? There's a word in there. All these, what did they do to him? How does he feel about all these prisoners in the cage? Oppressed, good. They all oppressed him. So there's oppression here. They oppressed him. Okay, so those are some of the recurring elements that we've seen before, and they're in this piece also. Okay, he also states right below that, about 10 lines, he said, all I knew was that I was stuck between my hatred of the empire, the British Empire that I served, and my rage against the evil-spirited little beast who tried to make my job impossible. But previously he had stated, how does he feel about the people there, the Burmese? Okay, he doesn't have anything against the Burmese people. As far as he is concerned, the Burmese are the ones that are in the right in this situation. The British have invaded this country and taken over and are trying to get their colonies set up there. And he feels sorry for these people. He says, I am for the oppressed and against the oppressors. And at the same time, he's enforcing British rule there and states that he does not like the way they make his job difficult, but he doesn't like the British who are making him doing it. What do we call that in literature? What's that literary element? Situational irony, real good. Situational irony. So there's an example of situational irony right in the first few sentences, or the first, the first 2 paragraphs of the story. Okay. He says that he, as this person who is imposing British rule on a people who obviously they think cannot take care of themselves, that he does not like this, but he does it anyway. Why do you think he does it? Okay, maybe he's just dumb. He's not very... Oh, the people or him? Him. Maybe he just doesn't know really what else to do. That's high.
Maybe because he was the one that
Okay, that's good. What is his greatest fear? That they're going to laugh at him. And he said this is the fear of whom? Of yes, it is a fear of all humanity, but of his nationality. It's the fear of every British male that he will be laughed at. And he does not want the British to look stupid, to look weak in front of these Burmese people. And it's a thing that bombards his thinking and all that he does. At the end of the first column, he says, on page 885, the first column, he says, with another part, I thought that the greatest joy in the world would be to drive a bayonet into a Buddhist priest's guts. Feelings like these are normal byproducts of imperialism. So what has influenced his thinking? What is responsible for his way of thinking and his attitude? The way who was treated? The Burmese or the British? Okay, explain it to
Didn't
me.
you say that they spit on him or whatever?
When we were reading a while ago? Okay,
That was
Something like that. Did they trip them?
okay, okay. Well, keep going. You're getting there. You're what I'm looking for. Why does he think this way about the Burmese in particular? Why does he want to take a bayonet and stab it into a Buddhist priest's gut? Good, that's what he was taught. In the very next phrase of that, he says, these are the normal byproducts of imperialism. So it is his environment, his society, and that which has been placed in his mind that causes him to think this way. Most of us probably don't run around thinking about the day we're going to grab a bayonet and stab it into a Buddhist priest's gut. Hope not, anyway. Our teachers do. I hope not too. But he thinks this way, and he says this is a normal byproduct of imperialism. It's normal. In our society today, does our society condition us to think certain ways? It doesn't? Yes, I think it does very much so. Unless you have a very what? Strong self-will, maybe? But regardless of your self-will, there is a certain degree to which the environment will influence you. And is it always for the better? No. Okay, let's go back to yesterday. We talked about Black Boy by Richard Wright. How had the society influenced him? Not Richard Wright, but those around Richard Wright. Think specifics now. Okay, give me specific examples. Think back to the story. Okay, it was a white lady.
They're stronger.
Okay, the white lady said, "Boy, do you steal?" And what did he reply? No, ma'am. But he laughed.
He left
Okay, Ricky, why did he laugh?
because he said, if I did steal, why would I be killing you?
Right, so the two stereotypes were all blacks steal and all blacks are dumb enough to admit that they steal.
They're strong or whatever.
Okay, later, another stereotype was when the dog bit him and he said, a dog bite can't hurt a nigger, right? Okay, so did he really believe this? No, not Richard Wright, but the man who said it. Did he really believe it? Yes, he really believed it. Now, common sense would tell you, that's stupidity, right? You just have to be a moron. But it doesn't affect the man's, he doesn't reason. What has overridden his rationality? Society had conditioned him to be like that. And we talked about how society is dropping the racist labeling. The old people with blacks say, what's the labelist term that we all hate so? Niggers. And what do our generation basically say when they're referring to someone of a different race? They call their race as color if they're talking about a certain person, don't they? And we talked about how the younger generation is just referring to people as people. So we're slowly getting rid of this. And but we see here that he says this is a normal byproduct of imperialism, so this is common thinking. Also, we saw racism and prejudice in this piece, and we've seen that in the other pieces too. Where did we see it in this one? Some people who aren't helping me help out. Chrissy, where did we see racism in here? There were two instances of racism in this piece. Remember? Okay, take a stab at it. I know you got a general idea.
When that guy got killed and they said that he wasn't worth it.
Okay, good. So you did know. You thought you did, but you did. Okay, the man got killed. What was his nationality?
Indian.
Okay, he was an Indian. And so there was one example. They said his life wasn't worth much. What was the other example of racism, Mike? You have your hand up.
When he was tripped and the referee was dealing with it.
Okay, that's another one. And another one?
Are we talking about the yesterday's one?
No, we're talking about today's.
Oh, when he said, but he won't mind that they kill the elephant because he's just an Indian?
Right, that's good. There were three instances in here. I didn't think about the one that Mike came up with. So that's all right. The third one, at the beginning, talking about the tripping of him because he's British and the Burmese were the referees, the Burmese were the referees. So we've had several instances of racism. Another recurring element in 20th century literature is racism. Why don't the natives get excited about the elephant when he's tearing up their homes? Why do they wait till he's going to be shot to get excited about what's going on?
Maybe it was just a normal thing. What?
Okay, she says they just had to live with the fact that the elephant tore up their homes, but let's think about human nature. Which would you be more excited about? Okay, that's good, but let's take it more, I want to go more generally then, on a more general basis. The people get their homes crushed by the elephant, and he gives the implication that it didn't stir them up too much. But when they come out and they think that someone or the elephant is going to get shot, how do they act? I mean, thousands of people lining the roads forever and ever. They know something's going to die. Why does death fascinate people like that?
You have to see someone else suffer.
Okay, maybe we like to see the sufferings. Maybe we like to see something that is inevitable for each of us. Do what? As long as it's not them, right. As long as it's not them. But isn't that true that not everyone, but on a majority scale, aren't we drawn to the morbid, the violent, the gory? Look at the theaters. What are the most successful movies? Murders. What are Freddy, Jason, Michael? She was right. But which ones make the most money? Part 28. Yes. It goes on forever. It's a never-ending saga. Okay. Let's go back to our discussion here. He states that these natives get excited about the elephant being shot. But then he follows up that statement by saying that it would be equally exciting to an English crowd. Why does he do that? Okay, that's right. Say it loud.
They're cool too, and just like how the Spanish, they kill like the bulls and stuff.
Right, good. It's something, humanity is alike. They would all be fascinated by this, the cruelty of it. Do you think he should have shot the elephant? No. Why? Now, wait a minute, before you answer, a man's life had been taken by this elephant. Why shouldn't he have shot the elephant?
What is it?
It wasn't his elephant, okay. And what were you going to say, Amy? Okay, what did the elephant do to the narrator? That's a good question. Okay, what did the Indian...
What did the Indian do to the elephant?
Okay, what did the Indian do to the elephant? Maybe the elephant was provoked. But what do they call this savage display that these elephants go through? What do they call it in the book? A must. So what does that tell you? Okay, it has to happen. Why? Why does it have to happen? There's a reason. Why do elephants get like this? What are they using, or what are they using the elephant right now in life? Work. Okay. Brian said work. What did we see in the movie? The elephants hauling the logs on their backs, carrying people. Do elephants have a natural tendency to want to do those type of things? Do elephants have a tendency to want to be tied up? Do elephants have a tendency to want to be led by a chain? No. So the elephant has been taken from his natural habitat and has been placed somewhere that is dominated by man. And they call this, when he goes into the savage rage, a must, indicating that it's something that is inevitable. So do you think the elephant was justified in his savage attack on the Indian?
Yeah.
And the Indian was the owner, right?
The Indian was
Another Indian.
Okay, yes, another Indian was
Right,
his own.
okay,
Okay, but we must keep in mind that he did kill a man. And one of the last sentences in the paper, or in the story, he said, legally, I had done the right thing. Why does he have an internal conflict? Yeah, he legally done the right thing.
Because he didn't.
That's not what he
How's everybody doing? Mike,
That wasn't his original intention.
it wasn't his original intentions. Take it a little further for me. That's right, Mike, but I want you to go a little further with it. Let Chrissy help you.
He knows that's not the real reason he killed the elephant.
Okay, that's not the real reason he had killed the elephant. He killed the elephant for a reason other than a legal reason. So does he feel justified in his act? No, not at all. He feels guilty because of what he's done. And feels guilt, a recurring element of 20th century literature. Now, I asked you also at the beginning to think about a theme. If you had to pull a theme out of this work, what would it be? I'm going to pick on some people who aren't talking. Marilena, what do you think the theme would be of this story? A one-sentence theme. No wrong answers. This is brainstorming. Okay, that's an idea. Killing is wrong, perhaps. What else might it be?
Influenced by other people.
Okay, good. People are influenced by other people. Now let's start putting all these together that you're saying, because you're all right and you're getting components of the theme, which is a bit broader than what you're getting at. What do you think the theme is? Somebody else contribute. Lois. What do you think the theme is? Do you have an idea, Monica? Who?
If you don't want to do something when people...
Okay, listen, she's getting real close here.
If you don't want to do something and people will start provoking you and then you do it.
Okay, don't do something when you're provoked to do it on your own intentions. Okay, we're getting really close now. What do you think? What do you think he has lost by committing this crime against himself? He's what? He's lost all of humanity? I hope not, because that includes me. Okay, she says he's lost his dignity. Chrissy, was that you that said that? Or his values. He's lost his values. What else has he lost? His self-control and his ability to do what? Okay, really good. He's lost his... Don't pack up yet. After about 3 minutes. As that clock is fed. Okay, how has he lost his ability to make his own decisions? Okay, other people are making his decisions for him. So, totality, he has lost his individual freedom because he has given that individual freedom over to a group of people, ironically, whom he doesn't necessarily love, although he dislikes, but who despise him. And he's doing it for a governmental rule that he despises, but he stays in it. So in the whole story, it's a whole type of situational irony, because he's doing something that in which he does not believe. Do we do the same things today? All the time. And do we have a fear of people laughing at us? And many times do we not act out of that fear versus what we consciously know to be right or beneficial to ourselves? Okay, there's one more thing in here. What did he say he wore?
Mask.
A mask. And where did we see that at? In Black Boy. So let's wrap this up and talk about some of the recurring elements. What were some that we've seen?
Guilt.
Okay, guilt. Okay, don't get too fast.
Racism.
Cruelty, racism. Oppression. Okay, discrimination. Good.
Thank you.
Okay, remorse about what? About your past, maybe. Or after he does this, he feels guilty about it, right? Okay. And what else? What else did we see that's recurred before? I just said it a second ago. Masking. Good. And where did you see masking at? Okay, in Black Boy. In Black Boy. So we've gone through 5 stories. Add that to your 5th column. Put shooting an elephant at the top. Put that in quotation marks because it's a short story. I'll be through in a minute. I'll let you go. And tomorrow when you come to class, we'll work on your writing project. And as soon as everybody sits down, I'll dismiss you. Yes, we're going to work on them in class if that's okay with you. You may go. Have a good day. You're a great class. Bye-bye. Everybody look in the videotape and wave bye.
Y'all go down and come down a minute.
I talked to Mrs. Bishop about that, and she said she has to wait for her. Okay, well, she said she was correction. But since she has that correction, I
Are you busy?
It's fun to get everybody.
And you're gonna do the same form that you did on this paper.
Now it's taped.